Nope, wrong one. Let's go. Ladies and gentlemen, let's get into this next best of 3. This is a Tier 1 bracket of the CPL preseason tournament. Winners of the preseason tournament will be able to get into better seeding positions, I believe. And actually, I don't know what Tier 1 is really kind of able to... Actually, I think it's just a for-fun tournament, just in general. But so far, it seems like we're going to get into a couple more fun games of the preseason tournament before we get into the actual CPL season. Do tune into CPL. If you don't know what it is, Coach Pupil League, it's like the kind of introductory league for Brood War. Coaches run teams. Teams are consisted of 3 different tiers of pupils. Tier 1 being the highest B, A, or mostly like B grade, high C grade players. Tier 2 being kind of like D to C, and then Tier 3 being D and, or low D and below. And this is really just kind of teach players how to start getting into Brood War, kind of replay analysis, a lot of those types of things. With every Sunday, every week being each team kind of pitted up against each other for pretty much even matches. So you're a new player playing against other new players. With all that said, let's get into this game. Spawn down here in the bottom right-hand corner. It is Gimme the Double G's, a.k.a. Big Daddy, the teal Terran player. And up here in the top right-hand corner, our yellow Zerg player. This is Vigamox. I believe this is Sigrun. I might be incorrect here, but I'm pretty sure this is Sigrun. This is the best of 3. We're starting off here on Circuit Breaker. TVZ is our matchup. I love TVZ. Oh my god, do I love TVZ. It's my favorite matchup. At the highest levels, TVZ is definitely the funnest to watch. Zerg is obviously the most unfavored in this matchup. Zerg has a little bit of a tough time, and especially at the lower levels, Zerg has to really micro quite a bit and make a lot of smart decisions and be very well aware of what Terran is up to. Terran is just kind of like, I'm Terran, I'm just going to walk across the map here. That said, things like lurkers do get to be a little bit harder to deal with at lower levels just because lurkers require correct responses and good micro. So far, Big Daddy is going to be going for a barracks expand. Really, really safe, standard. Does have the single SCV. Typically, when you're going against a Zerg, you're going for the barracks expand. If the first spot you scout, you don't see a Zerg, you do send out a second SCV to kind of simultaneously scout the last position, because a 9 pool will hit you unexpectedly really early. Especially because in Circuit Breaker, the vertical positions are actually the closest positions ones. Those are the ones you really want to scout first. But, alas, Sigrun, Vigamox, not going for anything too crazy. We are seeing a double hatch play coming out here, though, from Vigamox. And that is pretty much the flavor of the meta right now, is the 2 hatch play. Typically at this point, you'll see that a Terran will go for the double racks before Engineering Bay. And that doesn't seem to be exactly what Double G is going for. Double G went back to the bottom left-hand corner, which is weird. Thank you for the sub there, Hannibal Barca. Very appreciated. But, yeah, this is actually kind of troublesome as well. Looks like actually Vigamox playing really nice. Oh, the Zergling! What? Zergling! You're just letting that SCV get on in here? There we go. The drone, the killer drone over here from Vigamox. Gonna take that down. However, 3rd hatchery go down here really early as well. And did I just see an Evo chamber? Alright, so Sigrun, Vigamox playing some really weird stuff here. Some crazy Zerg style. Hydra Den into Evo chambers. Yeah, we're seeing a little bit more of the crazy Zerg style, which typically relies on heavy upgrades on Hydralisks and just pretty much overwhelming your opponents. This is actually pretty effective against Terrans, if the Terrans don't react correctly. One way you can react as a Terran, an easy way to react that doesn't really kind of scale well into the higher skill trees, is to kind of just go for double factory and get a bunch of siege tanks. Siege tanks do shred Hydralisks apart, but a smart Zerg will kind of just overwhelm the siege tanks with really good spreads and really kind of great concaves. the real way that you're supposed to handle this is to really just get a lot of upgrades. You kind of go for like 2-2 really quickly as with bio, and you split stim and get a healthy number of medics, because Hydras actually do have a hard time getting through Marine bio numbers. Hydras, fun fact, do explosive damage with their spit, so they actually don't do full damage against Marines. I do believe they do only 75%. I don't know if it's explosive. It's not concussive, though. I think it's explosive. I think Hydras do explosive damage. Somebody correct me there. And, it makes it a little bit more difficult for the Hydras to kind of chew through the amount of bio that actually exists. Now, here's the interesting thing. Oh ho ho! BigDaddy is thinking that this is a Mutalisk. In which case, BigDaddy's popping down a bunch of missile turrets at the natural, trying to get ready for the Mutalisk push. But there's no lair. It's not even lurkers. So the scans came down, saw double hatchery, I would assume, but didn't quite get this scout correctly, and it looks like BigDaddy is going to be prepared for things that are not happening. Now we're up to four barracks, so it looks like BigDaddy does want to play a little bit more of the tech focus, not going for the five racks play, which forces you to kind of stay on bio for a little bit longer, delays your factory to about 8-9 minutes. At this point, you can see the factory going down at about 6:30. This is actually a really healthy factory timing. However, the Marine bio ball is actually really small for this time period. You typically want to have a little bit more, and I think there's a couple of missed microcycles here from BigDaddy. Either to get a quicker factory, or just playing a little bit more skimpy accidentally. Overall, though, Vigamox is pretty much prepared at both bases with 2 sucking colonies. Very interesting. So Lair now finally coming down here, and this is going to be getting pretty much into faster and faster upgrades. I believe +1 weapons has already finished up here. Yeah, so these Hydras are already in a pretty good spot. If I had to guess, if I really had to guess, this is going to be Vigamox getting a bunch of Hydras into a Queen's Nest as soon as this Lair finishes up, and going for Ensnare. If you ensnare the Marines, then the Hydras actually do really well against bio balls, because Ensnare not only does slow down units, but also slows their attack speed, and really heavily impacts the Marines' damage output, even with stim. It gets a little bit dicey though, because Ensnare is what, 75 energy. You have to kind of like spread it out pretty well, and if the Terran gets up to like 10 barracks, it's a lot of Marines you have to deal with. But right now, Double G is still playing. BigDaddy is still playing pretty conservative in terms of macro here, just trying to really get that starport, double starport up, getting those science vessels down. D-Shield is also pretty good against the Hydra numbers as well. It does soak up a lot of damage if the Hydras are kind of like just kind of A-moving. But yeah, there's that Queen's Nest coming down. It could just be for a quick lair into Defilers, but Defilers kind of work counterintuitively against what you're aiming for with Hydras, because you just kind of nerf out your own range. So I don't think this is for going into Hive really quickly, but I might be wrong. Oh, it is. Okay, interesting. The thing with going for such high Hydra numbers and going for upgrades really quickly with Hydras is that you don't actually synergize well back into getting into a whole bunch of Ultralisks. So I don't think this is going to be... I think this is going to be staying on Hydras for a while, getting probably a 2-2 upgrades really quickly. There's Carapace coming down here. There's no other Evo chamber. Okay, never mind. So we're just going to go for 1-1. So Vigamox is kind of playing a lot of all over the place. Meanwhile, we're seeing a pretty standard Terran play out of here, and neither player has really kind of moved out of their base, which is very interesting, very weird. And no third base coming out from Terran either. So do we have lurkers now starting to come down here? Which, lurkers with +1 weapons, you need to have +2 to armor on your Marines to not die in 2 hits. So you need to get like +3, and then all of a sudden, as soon as the lurkers get like +2, oh my god, you just give up. You just walk around lurkers at that point. You're just like, all right, lurkers, you're there. I respect you, and I'm gonna just leave. But oh dear, oh dear, oh dear, do not push it to high ground. Oh, I don't know about this one there, Chief. High ground is going to be really effective with with Hydras versus Marines. And with that many lurkers as well. Ooh, pushing down into it. Okay, I was about to say there's a siege tank there. You got to play a little bit more defensive here. Now, there was a drop ship, but I didn't see where that drop ship did actually go in for a drop. No, it's still there. Okay. And this is the problem. So basically why Big Daddy was trying to push up to the high ground is you really cannot push across these bridges. You pretty much are just subscribing yourself to lurker pain if you try to push across the bridges with Marines. Marines are dumb. They cluster, and lurkers just murder them. So the only way for really Big Daddy to push up here is to go up this ramp. And that's why Vigamox is just keeping the hold here. The first science vessel has come out. Dropship is starting to come with the rest of the army. That's weird. But at this point, we do have the 1-1 upgrades here. Siege tank trying to get on the high ground. It's going to get sniped out there by those Hydras. Looks like the lurkers are going to be able to burrow down here as well. One does go down. The Marines are trying to push into this, but they're just taking so much damage. We are still only on 1-0 in terms of upgrades as well, and there goes most of that Marine bio ball. The science vessel walks in front. Vigamox doing a really good job of getting the focus fire on the science vessel. Is going to actually get broken, and most of these units are going to have to back up here. Somebody throw down the Tesagi emote here. And it looks like Big Daddy is going to be able to get the high ground, so never mind, I do take that back. So here comes the Defilers with Consume and Dark Swarm available. And now we've transferred back into mostly Zergling army. And once the lurkers do get the burrow, yeah, this is going to break this immediately. And there's another Dark Swarm on top of the Marines. The Zergling are getting on top, doing so much damage. The lurkers are able to get into position and reclaim the high ground. And again, there's no third base deployed here for Big Daddy, so Big Daddy's actually still in a little bit of a trouble spot here. No +1 armor either, though it really wouldn't help now that the lurkers do have their +1 weapons. Much quicker than usual. Double Scourge coming in here. They're going to be able to get the side vessel. No! Sniped right at the last second. Bunch of Marines now moving in. Kind of just coming in to kind of resupply this army. But at this point, Vigamox does have the 4th base up and running. 5th base coming up here at the top left-hand corner. I think Vigamox is in a really, really good spot. Double Evo Chamber now starting to come down here. No Ultra Chamber just yet, but that's okay. Dark Swarm did go down, breaking the Marine Ball again. The Siege Tank did fall. The Lurkers trying to push little by little across the map. And at this point, ooh, Double G's is in a really awkward situation. And just now starting to get up to 8 barracks. Typically at this point, we start to see Terran get to like 10 racks. And in fact, is this potentially moving on into a mech transition? I'm just kind of curious about that. But 1-1 right now with the Marines. This is starting to get kind of rough. You really want to be getting into 2-2 with your Marines at this point. As soon as your really your science vessel facility finishes up, you really want to make sure that your 2-2 is kind of on the way. And the fact that 2-2 is going to be so far away and that Vigamox is already pretty good in upgrades, things are looking a little bit desperate here for Terran. Now, there's a bunch of units moving up here. Dark Swarm is going to go down. One Irradiate on those Defilers. Another Dark Swarm going down there. The Lurkers moving forward on top of the Marines. And it looks like those Marines are going to keep kind of pushed back and away from the Dark Swarm, but still a lot of units did go down there. A lot of Irradiates as well. But that does allow for Vigamox here to get that 5th base in the top left-hand corner. And with that, I mean, like, that's kind of letting Zerg run away with the game. Double Evo Chamber, as I was saying before. So we started off with a very Hydra-focused style and moved back into pretty much standard Zerg versus Terran Defiler Zergling. Nidus Canal did finish up over here. But the Terran's just kind of like stuck in the middle of the map. Looks like there's a second factor over here. I'm curious. More Marines kind of rallying over here. And so Vigamox has kind of done a really interesting build to get to this point, but it worked out long enough, and really just, you know, kind of keeping the Terran at bay for those first couple of pushes has really just stopped the Terran from really getting the foothold that is really easy for Terran to pretty much just win the game from. Now, BigDaddy is still in a pretty good position, 150 supply to 106, so really this isn't that sold for Vigamox, but for Zerg to get 5 bases at this point, it does start to look a little bit grimmer. There is a Defiler here. There's no Radiates just yet. And oh my god, don't walk the Marines up the ramp. Do not walk the Marines up the ramp. Oh, you're walking the Marines up the ramp. Is that going to be a plague? Oh no. Don't worry. Oh, that's weird. Oh, but an Irradiate. An Eraser build. Eraser to kill a bunch of those drones. But still, this is the 5th base, so it's not terrible to lose all those drones at this point. It's not great, obviously. More gas, the better. But, oh, here comes a bunch of Scourge as well. This is looking pretty rough. And there's, oh no, and it's another vessel going down. Okay, this is actually taking a lot of vessels down, but we do have a bunch of them back home, back at the ranch. Here comes a bunch of Zerglings with 2-1 upgrades as well. Terran's still on 1-1. These Zerglings are just going to completely destroy all of these Marines. But the weird thing here is that actually Vigamox has been playing pretty much on her side of the map the entire game. And because of that, like, Terran is able to get this bottom left-hand corner base pretty easily. With a pretty big mech switch on the way as well. So, if Vigamox does let that happen, I mean, that's going to allow BigDaddy to pretty much get into a slightly more stable spot. We do have the double upgrades coming down here from the armory as well. This vessel is still just kind of hanging out here. Oh god. Hello. Really just need like 30 more Scourge at this point. There's a bunch of Zerglings. We're going to draw a bunch of mines. Not going to be able to do that much. The Marines are shredding them up. There's actually no medics with this either. You really need a lot of medics to be with your Marines in order to kind of hold this really well. But really, Vigamox needs to start breaking these positions. Because if you let Terran get into a good mech switch and get it for 2-2, you are going to be in a world of pain. Now, granted, 1-1 did just barely start. So we do have a large window here for Vigamox to start kind of getting across the map, but it looks like the amount of macro is lacking here. We're not seeing like a lot of macro hatcheries. We're not seeing a ton of Zergling kind of pouring out all across the map to really kind of break everything. But here's a couple more Zerglings. But this is where things with Zerg start to get a little bit unruly. When you start having to walk around the map with about 130 plus supply of Zerg, it's really difficult to kind of coordinate everything together. Zerg's a very high numbers race, and granted, when you start getting the cows out, yeah, sure, that's great, but it's still like very difficult to kind of coordinate your Ultralists with Dark Swarms, with everything else. And So we are breaking in the middle here with Vigamox's push. But BigDaddy is kind of like shrugging it off. Not too much of a problem here. BigDaddy has a lot of scouting information, pretty much, of everything that's going on here with Vigamox. But, okay, we actually have a lot of overlords with speed. That's normal, but they were floating over the army. I was curious if that was going to go into something like drops. It doesn't look like it. So we are now finally at, we're at 2-1 right now with the upgrades for Zerg. Meanwhile, we're at 1-1 now and going into shoot 1 with Terran mech. And we have a lot of factories over here starting to build out a lot of mech units. And Vigamox just kind of let that happen. But Vigamox did get this base up and moving. In the middle of the map, so this is the thing when you're playing mech style, is you really want to have pretty much the entire map covered in mines. It's like a couple of mines here and there. You really need way more than that though. And without having a billion mines, you can see these ultras just get to walk across the map without too much of a problem. Because really the things that stop ultras are ridiculous amounts of mines. Now we did just hit 5-2 on these ultras, and the Terran just hit 2-1. But you can just see that without so many mines, these ultras are just able to walk across the map, and there's nothing to deny these ultras the ability to get into the natural and main base. There's just so many ultras at this point that already BigDaddy is starting to fall apart. A bunch of Scourge did come down here on the science vessels, and I just don't see what BigDaddy is going to be able to do here. Now maybe ball up in the bottom left-hand corner, but there's going to be a lot that's going to have to be rebuilt. The science facility, all the supply depots, and pretty much everything else. I think honestly at this point, Vigamox just broke with just nothing but ultras, and that's pretty much the biggest issue with going for that mech. Is you need to be able to pretty much contain the Zerg as much as possible, and if not that, then at least stop as much as possible with nothing but vultures. So at this point, though, BigDaddy is coming back in here with a bunch of vultures. They're now starting to spread those mines. A little bit too late, though. We'll do the rest of that. More Marine moving over here to stop this mineral. Still at 1-1. It's going to be those upgrades also getting canceled here as well. But BigDaddy hasn't given up just yet. We do have Queens coming down here, probably to bust a couple of those siege tanks with broodlings. And this would have been really great if BigDaddy was putting down all these spider mines way, way earlier in the game. But unfortunately, that just didn't happen. And being contained back down to 2 bases, I don't see what BigDaddy is going to be able to do. Especially because at this point, I mean, like, Vigamox could just start, you know, A-moving ultras and Zergling across the map. Especially with, oh my god, all those spider mines right there. But those just get dragged in and then just keep moving. Oh! But see, that's what spider mines do to ultralists, and that's why you want to build a billion of them. It looks like this might be a giant drop. We'll need to take the barracks over here. And so, I mean, BigDaddy's got a great contain. I mean, defensive, you know, field over here. And that's nice, but it's not going to be able to contain the Zerg from stopping, pretty much stop the Zerg from getting the rest of the map. And once that happens, Zerg just kind of A-move a bunch of units in there. Now, BigDaddy's trying to get up to like 200 and a bunch of upgrades, but that's going to take a very long time. And even then, I'm not seeing BigDaddy really kind of push out a bunch of vultures, just, you know, now that there's not anything attacking, and just mining up the entire map again. But it looks like we're just going to pick up a bunch of units over here. And that is going to be a massive drop. Ah, yes, the double entry bay wall. And yeah, I mean, at this point, Vigamox has 199 out of 200. And I think it's going to be a coordination of drops on top of the tanks while everything else just kind of pours across the bridge. Or maybe just go straight through and, you know, passes into the main base. Really just kind of anything, anywhere, at any time. Just do something. And you'll probably just kill the Terran at this point. But okay, there we go. Just kind of coordinating everything, it looks like. So there goes all the overlords. There goes the rest of the ultras kind of pouring down into the map. And I mean, that's a lot of Goliaths. Oh, okay. Backing up. Nope. Going for it. The Goliaths are in a move command. The Goliaths also don't have Terran boosters either. There's just a bunch of units just getting dropped absolutely everywhere. The Defilers dropping on the Dark Swarms and Plagues. And there's absolutely everything getting just shredded apart. Now, granted, this will get cleaned up and everything will die here. But Vigamox should just keep doing this and look at what the supply is for both sides here. Vigamox is at 170 again, and BigDaddy is at 85. And that one lone space cow. God, I love ultras in this game. I mean, I hate playing against them. But I like playing against ultras in StarCraft Brood War way more than I like playing against ultras in StarCraft Brood. Oh my god, I hate that. And here comes a bunch more. There's the GG. BigDaddy gets knocked out by Vigamox. Game number 1. Swap over to my beautiful face while I set up game number 2, the replay. And we're going to do a fighting spirit. Oh, nope. There we go. Okie dokie. So, spawning up here in the top right-hand corner is our brown Zerg player. Vigamox currently up 1-0 over their opponent. And over here on the top left-hand corner of Fighting Spirit, it is BigDaddy, aka Gimme the Double G's. Oh, jeez. So TVZ, Fighting Spirit. This is pretty much like the most typical of typical that's ever typical to all typicals. Most Zergs in this situation go for Mutalisks because you either have to walk across a bridge or deal with the thin ramps here. trying to push into Zerg. There's more bridges, more ramps. It just allows the mutas to kind of float around. Also, the middle of the map, it's just kind of filled with a bunch of things that allow those mutas to really get great advantages over Marines. Likewise, most Terrans love to just bust the hell out of Zergs on this map. While Lurkers are really efficient at keeping the third base, you can pretty much contain a Zerg really easily by just putting a giant concave of Marines around every single bridge and stopping the third base from either going down while the mutas are out, or just saying, okay, fine, take your third base, I'm going to get my third gas really nice and easy and go into like double science vessel production really quick and easy. Since BigDaddy went for mech last game, I could see mech working yet again, just because you have so many like choke points that really allow for those siege tanks to get just absolutely excellent value. And because of the pathways, you can just kind of mine up a lot less spaces, because there's only so many ways you can come in and out of those bases later on in the game. So it does make things a little bit easier on kind of both sides. It's kind of why Fighting Spirit has become just such a pivotal map, and a lot of newbies are kind of learning this game nowadays. For a while, it was like Python and Lost Temple and Azure, but Fighting Spirit has kind of taken the place and has allowed for a lot of newbies to kind of just get into a really good way of learning how to macro, because it's really just a safe map. Speaking of all this, we don't see really anything too crazy. We do see a 12 hatch and a 12 pool. Followed up by another 14 hatch, well 13 hatch, which is a little weird. So 12, 14, 14 typically, or 12, 12, 14, I forget. I think it's 12, 12, 14. Probably with the immediate gas behind this. We're just going into a standard 3 hatch build. And to counter that, we are actually seeing BigDaddy go for double racks very early in the game with an academy behind us. We're just pretty much going for a bust at this point. Highly aggressive style. You get a bunch of Marines, a couple of medics, and you just kind of bust these Zerg really early. Now, if Vigamox doesn't get speedling early and instead opts to go for a very early lair, this is actually very troublesome for a Zerg to deal with. Pretty much have to pump down a bunch of sunken colonies to just rely on drone drills like crazy to really bust the Terran here. So we'll just have to keep an eye out on where that first 100 gas is going to go here for Vigamox. If she does end up going for lair really quickly, which would be at about now. Also getting supply blocked. No. Okay, so we are going to go for speed instead. Oh, no. Never mind. Lair. Ooh, it's going to be difficult. We already have a good number of Marines out here. But you need about 10 Marines and 2 medics to really kind of do this effectively, so there's just going to be a bunch of barracks pumping out here. And that first Zergling getting over here and kind of scouting out, and there's no command center. That's going to send off a lot of warning bells here for Vigamox. So now Vigamox knows to just stop drone production probably, and go into a lot of Sunkens. So there we go. Now we're up to about 10 Marines. Sorry, 8 Marines. Probably 2 more on the way. And this is when you generally push. And so you can already see there's a bunch of sun colonies, and this pretty much is already just going to kind of break this, which puts Vigamox into an amazing position. Now the transfer out of this is typically you just try to like keep the Zerg contained. The Zerg will then eventually just go and drone like crazy, get Spire, etc. But the idea is you can keep the Zerg stuck on 2 bases for pretty much the rest of the game because you just have this containment. However, the difficulty here is... don't take too many losses here. The difficulty here is that this Terran is really far behind in terms of econ, so you can already see that there's command center now going down here. And this puts BigDaddy into a really awkward situation. Typically, if the Zerg doesn't scout it soon enough, you are able to do some pretty good damage to a Zerg, if not just win the game. But now the Spire is already going down. Vigamox built 4 sunken colonies, which does cost the Zerg a lot to do. But with the command center being so late, getting down pretty much everything else is really going to be a stretch. You want to get the engineering bay down pretty much in the next coming moments as well. Okay, they're awesome. Perfect. Okay, so BigDaddy's playing this super, super well. And as long as no drones snuck out behind this, which doesn't look like it. Oh, wow. Going for a 5th sunken colony. Fun fact, if you ever assume that Terran is going for the Ayumi build, which is pretty much like a 6:30, no, I think it's a little bit later, maybe 7-minute push of like 4 barracks with stim and everything else. It's basically like 24 Marines and 4 medics. You need 5 sunken colonies to basically help that. So we have 6 sunken colonies, and that's basically assuming that this Terran didn't build any more. That's assuming that the Terran just went straight up into like 6 barracks, or no, sorry, 4 barracks, and just kept pumping Marines. Vigamox doesn't really have that much information. Did get a single Zergling over there to scout it out, and did see the command center. So the sunken colony was being built and then canceled just because she saw what was kind of going on. Spire did pop out here. We now have mutas on the way. There's no engineering. Sorry, there's no missile turrets down. And so I think these mutas are pretty much just going to start winning. Oh, don't send them over now, though. Build up a couple more. I believe you need 5. Okay, actually, this is going to be pretty much perfect here. You can see those sunken colonies really delayed those mutas getting across the map. Typically, those mutas will hit at about 7 minutes perfect. But because all those sunken colonies had to go down, pretty much delayed a lot of the Zerg build. You can see those mutas are going to probably hit at like, what, 7:30, 8 minutes? And BigDaddy's going to be ready for that. So BigDaddy's transitioned out of all this really, really well, and I really want to commend BigDaddy on that, because a lot of Terran players will try to do kind of like 2-rack styles like that really early in the game, and then kind of like flounder the macro behind this, but I think BigDaddy's going to get that point pretty well. I knows a lot of these timings pretty well as well. So a lot of props there, but at the same time, Vigamox is getting some pretty good engagements on top of these Marines. Going to be able to break a lot of them. Oh, and the drone did get out from the 3rd base too, and sees the dropship. And on only 2 barracks, losing all the Marines that BigDaddy has already lost. That's actually that's kind of back-breaking at that point. You don't want to lose any Marines, especially when you're only still on 2 barracks. 3rd barracks is on the way, but didn't quite get there. And with the dropship now trying to come out and getting seen and scouted, it's really rough. The 3rd barracks is now going to finally finish up here. We do have supply depots going down. Don't really need a supply depot. It's still 6 of 84. Seems a little early. But it looks like these Marines are going to... Oh, alright. They're going to get that one muta. Oh, that one muta get back in the sky. Ooh, nice. Nice little hits there. Taking out just a couple more of those Marines. Again, we're down to 3 barracks. There's actually not that many. And now following this up with the Zergling to try and like tank a lot of this damage. But the Zerglings are getting shredded up pretty quickly. Is that +1 weapons? No, not yet, actually. Oh, and taking down the dropship as well. Actually, I didn't see the dropship drop anything. No kills on anything either, so I don't think the dropship actually did go down. 3rd base now finally going down here for Vigamox in the bottom right-hand corner, so Vigamox is in a pretty good position. There we go. Now finally pick up things. But with the mutas on the way, if you lose this dropship, this is a lot to lose. Going for the bottom right-hand corner, trying to stop that 3rd base from happening. The muta's way out of position here. Oh, muta's poking back in the main base. Just losing one for free. And actually sneaking in here. Oh, wow, this is actually pretty nice. There were a couple lurkers over here, and Vigamox is actually privy to this. Doesn't know what's happening. The medic is actually really out of position. It looks like the Marines are going to be able to clean this up without too much of a problem. I'm sorry, the Zerg are going to be able to clean up the Marines without too much of a problem. There's now a couple of Scourge waiting for those dropships next time. really scary situation here for BigDaddy, though. Already down a game in the tournament. And it's the best of 3, so this is pretty much the last chance. And already, Vigamox has pretty much denied most of the things that BigDaddy was kind of going for here. Muta's coming in, poking down a couple more of these Marines. And there's a paltry number of Marines just kind of like trying to get some sort of zone control here. There's a siege tank joining in as well, but with the amount of Zergling kind of moving around the map, and the Mutas, and the Lurker tech that's also now out as well, with the 3rd base, Vigamox is sitting pretty happy. Ooh, scared kill from side so far. Are they going to be able to get it? No! Plus 5 tech somewhere. Oh, there it is, right. Where was the match? A bunch of dudes coming in from the side trying to poke in. No irradiate available for the Mutas. The Mutas are picking up a lot of these forces as they kind of walk their way over here, and this is actually going to just make it a little bit easier for when that break does come in. There's no defilers out just yet. The Defiler Mound, double the Defiler Mound is out here. The Mutas are just going after that science symbol. Not going to be able to get it, but at least a lot of these Zergling are going to be able to get some pretty good engagements here. And they're going to clean up actually all the missile turrets. Will allow those Mutas to come back in if they want to snipe that science vessel. But BigDaddy does take the 3rd base here at the 12 o'clock. But the Lurkers coming in as well. A lot of idle SCVs. Ooh, that's not good. That's when you know the pressure is on. When you know your macro is starting to slip here and there. The funny thing is, the more second colonies that Terran takes out, the easier it's going to be for Vigamox to get a concave, because now they're not going to be walking through like that small little choke point there. They kind of like forward. And wow, those couple of Zergling coming in and snacking right on that siege tank. Now with the Dark Storm coming down as well, that's going to allow for the Zerg to break out of this contain again. There's dropship going in, but the Scourge catching it as that happens. And yeah, I mean, this is just a tough situation for Terran to handle. The Science Vessel is the only one I think that's alive right now. And BigDaddy does have a lot of minerals, and it looks like a lot of those barracks are not pumping out more units, but trying to keep the micro alive and really get the value out of these units. It's always a really tough trade to, like, you know, when you're trying to decide, go back and forth between your macro and keeping your units alive. But the 4th base now coming down here for Vigamox, and this pretty much is going to allow for Vigamox to just spiral out of control. This is the difficult spot for Terran. When you get up to, when you let your Zerg opponent get up to 4 bases, where things get just kind of abominable until you get BCs out, because BCs are OP. I love BCs, man. It's like my favorite thing to go to now. But that's just a lot of units. Dark Storm's going to come down right on top of pretty much everything, and just breaking down through this natural. I don't know what BigDaddy's going to do. Ooh, the Defiler not getting that other Dark Storm down. But there's not really that much else to really deny the Zerg from just getting more and more Lurkers into position. And with more resupplies coming in here, I mean, just Vigamox can just break this natural pretty easily. So a couple of radiates going down. It's going to kill one of those. Yeah, it's going to kill one of them. More science coming out. The science production is pretty good, but I mean, there's nothing protecting this either. And oh, that's actually not Zergling tight. That makes sense. I think you have to build it like up and arc. But now there's cracklings. And there's a lone Marine and a bunch of SCVs, but I mean, BigDaddy just lost a lot of Marines just trying to kill a couple of Lurkers as well. The Lurkers are now on top of the ramp up here. Up 12 o'clock, and I just think that this is pretty much going to be game number 2 going on over here to Vigamox. Dark Swarm goes down yet again. The Zergling get on top of the Siege Tank. The Lurkers getting under Dark Swarm to get on top of the Marines as they come up to defend the third base. The third base gets broken. BigDaddy, GG's. That is Vigamox taking a 2-0 over their opponent. All right.